Hi there, I'm Peter Spencer bidding you welcome on behalf of Cornwall Stress-Free Television to Pencarrow near Bodmin. More than a stately home, it's home to descendants of the family that's owned it for centuries. And meet the Molesworths and discover the reality behind the appearance of this extraordinary place. It's a long drive, a very long drive, a very, very long drive, a mile long in point of fact. But then these posh folk never did like to be hemmed in, nosy neighbours, neck curtains, not the likes of them, thank you very much. Leave that to the riffraff. But there is at least plenty to look at on the way, getting on for 1,000 different species of plants, flowers and trees, like this one. The monkey puzzle tree. Actually, the phrase was coined here when a visitor took one look at it and announced that it would puzzle a monkey to climb it. Certainly puzzled me, but then I'm also puzzled by what's coming up next. Seems this place has been home to people for a very long time. Hard to work out quite when this was actually created, seeing as the Iron Age began something like 3,000 years ago and carried on right until the Romans arrived and spoiled everyone's fun, the rotters. But more of that in a while. Right now we're scrolling forward in time and looking out for the present-day dwelling. Can't be far now, surely. In fact, wait for it, we don't rush at things in Cornwall. Here it is, in all its glory. Good boys, good boys. Tasty hole, yeah? Georgian. 50 rooms, 50 acres of parkland. Neat. Begs the question though, how they got the dosh together. And the answer is, it took a while. The previous Pencarrow folk backed the wrong horse in the Wars of the Roses and lost the lot. Bit of a whoopsie-daisy moment, that. But the Molesworths, who came along 100 years or so later and still own the place, were smarter. They backed the right horse in the glorious revolution that saw off the Stuarts, got a gong for their pains and made loads of money. Mining, farming, banking, teamed up with Lloyds in the end, as one does, and you can't help but wonder, a spot of free trading along the way? Grand old Cornish tradition? Who knows? What we do know is that the 5th Baronet, Sir John Molesworth, completed the present Pencarrow House in the late 18th century. Pictures by Sir Joshua Reynolds. Sir John was his patron. Of course, the gentlemen tended to shave their heads because they were wearing wigs most of the time. Naturally enough, therefore, it got a bit parky when they took them off. Hence the tea-cosy look, each to their own. Certainly the folk that the Molesworths helped to see off did look better with their hair on, in the case of this dude with his head as well. This portrait of King Charles I was done from sketches drawn during his trial for treason, which is why he's probably not really looking quite at his best. His son, by contrast, is looking a teensy tad past his best, a trifle overcooked, but note the ever-roving eye. It is said that King Charles II fathered no fewer than 21 illegitimate children. Wonder what he'd have made of this lady. Andalusia, not just the wife of the 8th Baronet, but also a top-flight opera singer and London society hostess. Serious box office and more Meghan Markle than Love Island. Little wonder hubby-to-be Sir William Molesworth spent an arm and a leg tarting the place up for the wedding. Oddly enough, though, the family didn't think she was quite the ticket, not one of us. But she knew all the right people and brought them along. Charles Dickens, the exiled Emperor Napoleon III, oddly enough, and Sir Arthur Sullivan, you know, Gilbert and Sullivan. Oh yes, she opened doors all right. Talking of which, what is all this about? Ah, open sesame. This is the very piano on which Sullivan composed the music for the comic opera Iolanthe. And in this room there are some of the costumes made for this production. One of them is particularly interesting. Now, Carol Talboys, who for many years made this sort of stuff for a living, is here to give us the rundown.
Thank you. There have been many productions of Iolanthe over the years. This is the Lord Chancellor, a beautiful piece designed by Gilbert himself. This particular costume was one of the original costumes used in the very first performance at the Savoy Theatre in London. And the gold braid on here, on this costume, has suffered over the years and has now been conserved for future generations with the addition of this gold strip sewn over the top. This lovely fairy costume here came from a 1977 production by the D'Oyly Carte Company, and as an acknowledgement for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in that year, all the costumes were remade with a silver theme, designed by Michael Hayland. She also has beautiful wings and a lovely headdress including sparkly fairy lights invented by Joseph Swan. This gorgeous costume was worn by the character Phyllis when the D'Oyly Carte performed their centenary production in 1982. Not only do we have stunning detail that you can see on the costume, there is a great deal of detail in the petticoats here that you don't get to see at all. Also from the same centenary production that was actually performed in the grounds at Pencarrow is this costume here. Again, we have stunning workmanship from the D'Oyly Carte costumiers, and this is one of the Lord's costumes.
But Pencarrow's musical credentials go back a fair bit further than that. The husband of one of the many Molesworth ladies once dropped in on Ludwig van Beethoven in Vienna, as one does, and the great man dashed off a little ditty for him and gave him the manuscript. For some reason it got stashed away for a couple of centuries, but a couple of decades back it made a few bob at auction, which came in jolly handy. Lady Iona Molesworth, who currently rules the roost round here, explains why.
The place was empty for 18 years and it was unloved. It was opened up occasionally and it sat waiting for something to happen.
And what did happen? The roof had a problem, didn't it?
Oh, everything had a problem. It was damp. There were various rooms, there were 3 rooms which were pretty okay. Otherwise, it needed considerable attention.
And why did you leave it empty for 18 years?
Because my father-in-law was made to move out by my mother-in-law, who didn't like it. She liked cows. And she moved down to the farm. And very reluctantly, my father moved down to the farm, which was a good thing because she died down there quite early. So I'm glad he moved.
When you looked at this shambolic state, you must have thought, now, what earth are we going to do with this?
No, it wasn't shambolic. It was just sad. It wasn't shambolic. It was okay. The roof, yes, was a problem, but we didn't realise what a problem it was until we just thought, well, we better do something. And my husband had to come out of the army, and because it had to do something. So we decided it had to be open to public.
And did that grieve you, or did you think, well, share it, why not?
It didn't grieve me. I wasn't the slightest interest in the house. We'd luckily lived up in the army in different places and seen lots of other lovely countries. And we were living in Devon. So we came by the day for quite a few years. And we just got on with it.
Just got on with it. It does rather come across rather more as a cottage than a mansion industry. I mean, it's all hands to the pump, isn't it? What I can make out.
Well, it is a question of everybody doing a bit of something and not minding what you do.
And you, what's the least glamorous part of work that you've had to do around here?
I don't think anything's particularly glamorous. You just do what you have to. I still do. I clean the lavatories on Saturday and Sunday if they need cleaning. If it's dry, well, they need very little cleaning. If it's wet, then it is a bit of a nuisance. But, you just get on with it.
It doesn't sound particularly posh. I mean, do you consider yourself to be posh?
No. Do you?
Oh, listen, I'm the interviewer. I ask the questions. But
well, I know you did, but I'm...
No, I'm just a farmer's boy from Essex. Leave me out of this. But you don't consider yourself... I mean, your own background. I mean, school years. I mean, how did you perform? How was school for you?
School for me... well, I did actually rather... I don't know, I moved school rather often because... I find it easier to be naughty than be good.
Naughty?
Well, they didn't know I was dyslexic, so there was actually no point in learning because it didn't always go quite as you thought. I was very good at animal noises.
Well, that's very useful in the exam situation, of course, isn't it?
Yes. I think you'd better not ask me about exams.
Okay, I think you more or less answered the question before I even ask it. But but your own background. I mean, sort of. You look at a place like this and you think in terms of grand aristocracy. Do you consider yourself to be grand?
One night, my husband, who wasn't my husband, was sitting on the chaise longue at the bottom of the bed, not in the bed, on the chaise longue, and. We were gossiping about the people and how some of them behaved slightly interestingly. And suddenly the door flew open and my mother-in-law came in, absolutely hit the roof, told me what she thought of me, and I was to leave immediately next morning. Life has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so my husband went out and a hell of a row went on. He said, well, if she goes, I go. And it was, I think, the first time that anybody had told her. Anyway, it was a very frightening going down to breakfast. I was really worried. But again, you get on with it, don't you?
In the Battle of Wills, clearly you and your husband started as you meant to go on by the sound of things.
Of course.
A very determined man. And was the mother-in-law, I mean, how was she at breakfast then?
All I can remember was dreading going downstairs. My father-in-law, as always, was very, very sweet. And I can't remember anything about mother-in-law. I probably avoided her. I can't remember anything about it.
And would that have been in the room? Because there's a room which is all displayed like it's for a very large dinner party.
Yes, during parties they used the dining room. When there was just them and there was just us staying, or, once we were married, then the ante-room next door, which is definitely one of my favourite rooms, because it's sunny. It's a little warmer than other rooms, and we can get it warm, and it's actually got very attractive pictures, particularly the ones as you look out towards the garden. There's Torre del Grotto, and then there's a picture of the Thames below it. It's not a portrait, which is also nice.
And you've also got this fabulous statue of Aphrodite or Venus, have you not? Which looks as if it's had one or two slight accidents along the way, though, somehow.
Yes, unfortunately, she had a major accident when she went to be just made a little better looking. But unfortunately, the young man who brought her back looking absolutely wonderful didn't actually tie her on properly, and so halfway to Bodmin she fell over, which was a very definite disaster.
But you see, they managed to sort of stitch her up vaguely, didn't they? I mean, she looks all right, doesn't she? No.
She looks okay. She wears my father's boat cloak in the winter.
Well, that's very sensible, isn't it?
Oh, very. She's probably got it on now, I'm not sure. I haven't looked lately, because it's hardly winter yet.
You've got a few rooms open to the public. You've got a very large part of the house, which is not, because it's to do with the place being unloved, isn't it?
Well, we've got 11 rooms and halls open, which is quite a lot. Yes, there's another couple of 2 and nearly 3 floors open.
Do you think at some point they will get restored, or are you happy with your 11 rooms?
Which isn't a question of being happy, it's a question of money. The answer is no. No. I can't see anyone why. The tours are long enough, there's plenty to see. We do occasionally, very occasionally, we do the other side of the house tours, which people are fascinated by, particularly because the visitors lived upstairs, not just their help, servants. And life is... It's a completely different thing up there. You could easily take the whole 2 floors off and put it on the ground and have quite a big house, if you were allowed to.
Sure. And I believe I'm right in saying that your 2 sons would sometimes go out on the roof up there, and they would take one look at the weather vane and do something unpleasant to it.
Well, they actually learnt that from Father.
Ah.
Which is why the fox, which is in the original fox, which is now hanging on the wall in the cafe, that's why it's there, for 2 reasons. One, we were told it was dangerous and might fall. And secondly, it had rather a lot of gunshot wounds in it, or pellets, or whatever you call. Yeah. And then they did the same, because actually then it whizzes round. It's quite fun, you know.
Yeah, and they were quite good shots, I could get the impression.
But they were both very good shots. Well, they all 3 were.
Yeah, splendid, splendid. And the house itself, I mean, do you sort of love it, or do you think it's a millstone round your neck, or do you just...
Well, the funny thing is, when I first started here, I thought, oh, Lord, well, it's something that needs doing. And then gradually, it's funny, if you have to do something and you have to you gradually get used to it and it becomes a way of life. And, well, it was a job. You meet a lot of very nice people. There are a few you could possibly suggest they didn't come, but very, very few.
Why are you looking at me at this moment?
Why? Why do you think? No, it's an interesting life, and the great thing is that it's totally different, and it's always different. Every day is different. You never know who's going to turn up.
I take your point about being different every day. It's also, it is one up on a one up, one down. I mean, do you sort of feel privileged to be associated with this?
You see, that's an interesting thing. People do ask me that. No, it's not an easy house to grow old in because nothing is near. I mean, the bathroom is a 50-mile hike. Well, no, it's a good many, I think it's 75 steps from my bedroom. I did count it once, but I may be wrong. It's quite a long way. It's cold. It's very cold. But what you do, you just put on more clothes. And I live really very comfortably in the kitchen, which is now finished after 25 years, and I can get that warm.
And when it comes to how remunerative or otherwise, I mean, I note that your 2 sons went to Harrow. You've got a special name for that, haven't you?
Oh, the jump on the hump, that's right. Or the drain on the plain.
Sounds pretty unpleasant either way. And then, of course, so there they were, and then you look at, say, your son, your grandson and granddaughter. They're at the local school, are they not?
Oh, yes, they are. Very good it is too. Yep, very local. They walk up the drive, which is just about a mile long, and catch the bus the other side of the road and come back. They're elected to do that. On very rainy days, they get fetched, or depending, but mostly they do. They walk up and down.
And there was never, or was there, a thought of sending them, like their father, to a public school, an expensive, posh public school? Or?
No, no, they couldn't afford it. No, and I couldn't either. Because if you do it for one, you've got to do it for 2. I'm all for treating them the same. And anyway, they went to a very good local nursery, the first primary school, which was next door. And so then they go on to Wadebridge.
Yeah. And just in conclusion, this place, do you love it?
Well, I'm very fond of it. Very fond, and I do mind what happens to it, and the things that happen here have got to be right, which they are, and I think it's terribly important. If you're going to show something to people, you want it to be the best, don't you? But if I don't like it, then I don't do it.
She's happy with this, though, a bust of her dad, Sir Francis Loftus Tottenham, a Royal Navy Admiral, and, in 1930, close aide to King George V. Nice work, if you can get it. Nice touch here. Smoking's not quite the thing these days, but marketing a brand of tobacco as smooth as a baby's bottom is so inappropriate. And one of the Molesworth children had a problem with this mice and swan. Where, she demanded, are the mice? Ah, here they are, as quirkily charming as anything in this place. But illusions don't stop there, as Pencarrow regularly doubles up as a film set. Johnny Bamford is location manager for, along with many other productions, the Doc Martin series.
It's a wonderful house. It's got a fantastic facade, and actually the interior is rather old-fashioned, and we love that for a lot of things we film in Cornwall, and we love the family. Iona and Willie, they're great friends.
And are there any drawbacks to filming in Pencarrow?
I can't think of one, actually. No, there's not one. They're open, they're easy to get on with. It's a fantastic place to park for a film crew. If you want to have your lunches on a garden, there's no better garden in North Cornwall, or in Cornwall indeed.
As good as it gets, you're saying?
It's as good as it gets, yes. Thank you.
So much for the nice stuff. There's also the unrestored bits. Seriously, seriously unrestored. Seeing is believing. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. The bits the punters see are fab. This lot isn't. Room after room after room with a view. of detritus and dodgy bits. Setting this lot to rights looks like a lifetime's work. And the rest. But, and there are two buts, first, the offending roof, whose demise caused so many of the problems down there, has now been fixed. Second, the Molesworths, who as we know have been here a fair old while already, ain't going nowhere anytime soon.
And they keep on coming, generation after generation. Gilly Molesworth is the wife of Iona's younger son, James, who does most of the day-to-day running of the estate. Sophie Molesworth is their daughter.
Ah, look who it is. Hello, Peter.
Ladies, charming to see you.
Now, Gilly is often described as a former New York socialite, which brings a new dimension to one of Cornwall's oldest families and begs quite a few questions.
It is a bit of a leap from the city that never sleeps to the English rural aristocracy. I mean, first off, how did you and James actually meet?
James and I met when I was working in London, and I went to a party in the countryside, and he was dispatched to pick me up from Swindon Station. So we actually met at Swindon Station. How romantic.
Well, I mean, of all places, because there it is. But I mean, why were you going to the same party then?
It was James's sister's party. So our families know each other because his brother is also married to an American, and her family and my family are very old friends. So that's the connection.
Did you, though, imagine yourself ever ending up hooked up to the English aristocracy?
You know, I did love a Barbara Cartland novel when I was young, but I don't think anyone really imagines they're going to end up someplace like this, no.
So when you first saw it, I mean, you first clapped eyes on Pencarrow, did you have a sort of a Mandalay moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's magnificent and such a wealth of history behind it, and yeah, it's stunning. It's a romantic dream.
Sure. And the landed gentry, I mean, I will admit this to you, that actually a lot of us limeys think that the British landed gentry are sort of on a bit of another planet. I mean, between ourselves, do you think they're a bit bonkers too?
Absolutely. Someone had to improve the stock, Peter.
Well, you've clearly done a very good job with that. I mean, there is an argument that says you'd never join a club that would have you as a member, but clearly you've managed okay. And then, so what's it like actually living here?
Living here is great. It can be a bit isolating out in the countryside sometimes, but it's really magical being part of something that's a living, breathing part of history and such a great kind of center for architecture and art and gardening, and it's very part of the community as well. You know, there are a lot of people that come here and enjoy it and who work here, all types of people who like to get involved in the Pencarrow community. So it's a very special place to be.
And you don't actually miss then the bright lights of New York?
You know, I've done my days of taxi races to the next bar, and that was a fun chapter in my life. And this is a lovely place to bring up children. So.
And also you have the horses, of which you're clearly very fond.
I do. The horses are both my life stream and my midlife crisis. So we spend.
Steady on.
We spend a lot of work picking up bales and wheelbarrows, and that's the kind of day-to-day non-glamorous side of horse ownership, but they are pretty magnificent, you have to admit.
Well, I think that's beautiful, yeah. The work that James does, I mean, your husband, he does essentially the day-to-day running of the place. And that's, you know, again, you think, oh, he's got this amazing place, but it's actually jolly hard work, isn't it?
Yeah, the reality of day-to-day life at a stately home is things like clearing a rook's nest out of the attic and, you know, getting tadpoles out of the fountain, or trying to figure out where the Victorian drainage system goes with dowsing sticks and any way you can, you know, and also trying to look after it all, you know, in a way that these houses were built for people who had untold reservoirs of money, and of course now it's not. It's a different model these days. So you're always trying to make ends meet and do the best you can as a custodian of the place for the next generation.
Yes, I mean, actually, you mentioned the next generation. That's quite interesting. I mean, your husband, James, and his brother both went to one of the most expensive schools in England, and Sophie and her brother go to the local state school.
They do.
And, well, that's just how things pan out, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think it's very important to feel a part of your community and to do the best you can with what you've got. I think that's a good lesson for anyone.
Do you think it gives them a problem, the fact that they live in a very refracted space from everyone else, really?
People use the word posh as almost an insult. And I don't think you could get more posh than, you know, living here. But in fact, our day-to-day life isn't so very different from everyone else's, and the same things are important to us, and we you know, we all have to work and pull our weight and all the rest of it. So yeah, I think it does provide some issues for them where there's ignorance, but hopefully people also, you know, it's lovely that something like this still exists in today's world.
And then there's tomorrow's world. I mean, you know, could you see your daughter Sophie or her brother Freddie actually getting involved in running this place?
Well, yeah, there's lots of things that could happen in the future. And one of the things that's really fun about a place like Pencarrow is that each generation brings their personality to it. And that's one of the things that distinguishes it from some place like a National Trust property. They might, you know, expand the wedding business, or they might bring the soft fruit production back, or they might decide to do an organic farmer's market, or, you know, a B&B, who knows. They have to keep reinventing the model because it doesn't just stay in one place, it keeps evolving. So we're excited to see what the next generation brings.
And just finally, on the last generation, your husband and his brother and their father, they used to climb on the roof of this building, as I understand it, and take pot shots at the weather vane. Would you encourage that sort of behaviour in your offspring?
Well, obviously, wanton damage of historic artifacts is not ideal. However, it's a home, and you know, you want to be able to go on your scooter up and down the halls, and that's what makes it fun. So it's very important to have fun in life too. You can't just sort of live in a museum.
But actually shooting at things.
Another time-honored tradition of the aristocracy. What can I say?
But the Peacock Cafe, so called for the obvious reasons, should be reasonably safe these days from incoming fire. And visitors are well catered for in every way. They can join in the guided tours of the house, or wander round the Italian gardens, or the lake, or the ice house, or the rockery, or wherever. The grounds go on and on.
Nurturing this lot is a labour of love. The dedicated team of gardeners is at its most productive during the winter months, when the punters aren't allowed in and the chaps can just get on with it. But there's one area they're not allowed to touch because it's seriously protected heritage. Far and away the oldest bit, it's what gives the entire estate its name. The Cornish word Pencarrow means head of the stag, or some say high fort. What's plain to see is two vaguely concentric circles and, strangely, an apparently incomplete third one. This is one of the biggest Iron Age forts in the county. It's unusually well preserved, as it's never been hacked around by farmers or whatever, and has never been excavated either. The mind boggles at what insights into Iron Age life might be, as it were, unearthed if someone could get digging, or perhaps more to the point, get permission. There's a theory this final ring was being constructed to ward off a clear and present danger, but the defenders were overrun before they could finish the job. Graham Kirkham, who was for many years part of Cornwall's archaeological unit, joins me now to tell me I'm wrong. Or does he? I mean, Graham, what do you make of this strange outer circle which appears to be incomplete?
I think this third outer circuit of the ramparts is part of an ongoing project. Everything we know about Iron Age hill forts indicates that they were built as a sequence of different structures over a period of time. They were an ongoing attempt to assert status, authority, prestige in the landscape, something to be visible. And they may have just changed their minds at some point. Conditions, external conditions may have changed. It's not necessarily that another tribe came over the hill and wiped them all out.
Yes, so you're saying the function is not primarily defensive then?
I don't think so, and that's not the conclusion we get. I think hill forts are seen now to have a range of possible functions. They may have been an equivalent to a temple. They may equally have been an equivalent to a marketplace, a meeting place, the palace of a chief, a place where people could come together for annual or seasonal ceremonies. I don't think we can give them one specific function, and certainly they could have been defended if you had a lot of people to line the ramparts, but I don't think that was expressly what they were for. What they were for was to show what a big cheese you were by being able to command all this labour to actually get somebody to construct something like this.
Yeah, you say a lot of people. I mean, I imagine that at times people did actually live here with their cattle. And what sort of numbers are we talking about here?
Again, it's very hard to say. Sometimes when there have been excavations of the interiors of hill forts, archaeologists have found multiple roundhouses suggesting a significant population living there over a long period of time. Other ones are empty. They clearly weren't used as places of settlement. They may have been used for some of the other things. They may have been an annual marketplace or meeting place or a place where you crowned your chief, but not necessarily a settlement. So just because they look similar, they are defined by banks and ditches running around the top of a hill. It doesn't mean to say they had exactly the same significance or function for the people who lived at the time.
And I mean, I'm right to be fascinated by this, am I not? I mean, it is an extraordinary engineering feat, is it not?
I think it is. There are thousands of cubic meters, thousands of tons of material has been dug out of the ground with primitive tools. They would have had iron shod spades, they would have shovels, and they would have had picks, but only baskets to move stuff. And they have mounded up ramparts 2 meters high, dug ditches deeper than that. This is extraordinary. Those ditches are cut in solid rock. And that is quite something.
What were they digging into in the ground then?
They're digging into the top of bedrock. And this is one of the things that makes it so impressive, that their desire to create some kind of enclosure, some kind of impressive structure, even led them into digging into solid rock in order to get the material to create the ramparts and a stone facing for it.
Amazing. And the place itself, it's one of the biggest in the county, I believe I'm right in saying?
It's not a bad size, and it's also complex because it's got these 3 circuits that you mentioned. The inner circuit gives you a very nice social space. You can stand in the middle of it, and anybody anywhere around the interior can hear what you're saying, pretty much. But then there's another circuit outside that, and as you said, the unfinished 3rd circuit. So this is not a negligible monument. This is a lot of work that people have put in over probably generations. It was an ongoing project.
Well, I mean, there's all sorts of aspects to this. For example, there is the question of the fact that it hasn't apparently been excavated.
Yeah, we tend, modern archaeologists tend not to excavate unless either something's under threat, somebody wants to build a supermarket on top of it, or else there's a very, very good research question. And that's always a possibility. But excavation is expensive. And what happens after excavation, the analysis of what you found, is even more expensive. So why not let things lie until, for future archaeologists? We can tell an awful lot from looking at this from outside. We have modern techniques of survey and geophysics and so on. We don't have to dig things in order to understand them better. We may not understand everything, but we can at least get a better insight into what it was that our predecessors constructed.
What they constructed, and indeed their lifestyle. I mean, one cannot help but wonder what insights into Iron Age life might be buried under.
Absolutely. It very much depends on how it was used. We may very well, were we ever to dig, find the remains of round houses. They lived in round houses with thatched roofs. We may find evidence of ironworking, for example. It was the Iron Age. We may find evidence for the way they disposed of their rubbish, which is in itself an interesting question, because they didn't treat things like we do, shove it in the bin and just chuck it. They actually seem to have stored up their rubbish because it represented the life that had been lived. I know it's quite an odd concept, but it's what we're beginning to understand about what we find on Iron Age settlements.
And of course, what the Molesworth farm was a glorious piece of heritage, which they could sort of bolt into the package of the Georgian mansion. I mean, I note that the drive sort of, well, cuts through it, obviously, and so goes out of its way to cut through it.
It does, yeah, absolutely. I think in the early 19th century, a ride was created from the house to take in the hill fort. And so when you had visitors, important and wealthy visitors, you could take them out for a ride and divert them by, here's our hill fort. By the time you get to the 1840s, when the house is remodeled, they actually bring the main drive through the hill fort with a very impressive avenue of specimen trees and build 2 lodges to encourage people that this is the way you approach our house. You come through our Iron Age hill fort. And you have to remember, this is the 19th century when antiquities, and obviously mainly classical antiquities, were an important part of everybody's landscape park. And here we have the very fine Italian fountain in the garden that fronts the house. But they had something even better. They had something much older, and what's more, it was the Brits. None of your classicals. This was the real Brits, with oak trees. So they were creating an illusion for their guests, for themselves. It was part of a range of entertainments of the country house of the 19th century.
I think what you're telling me is the Molesworths as a breed did not like to miss a trick.
I think they employed every trick they could possibly identify to impress, just as they had in the Iron Age.
Seems the old Molesworths were never into missing a trick then, but likewise the current crop. It's worth one last look in the house at something which really shouldn't have ended well, but somehow did. And this is it, done from pictures of Pencarrow and done well. However, the Chinese artist might have made a mistake in putting in people, as it's pretty clear he'd never seen a Westerner. Nor, apparently, a fox. It's so bad that it's good. Don't you just love the bits that go wrong? Well, it really is as tasty from the inside as it looks from the outside. You really should check it out sometime because it's fascinating. Whenever you fancy, how about directly?